maybe the old cranky version of me would be like, ah, these kids,
Right.
There is that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because they're people. And the reality is, like, they just need someone to walk them through that and to help them understand that. Not to yell at them and come down on them, but to come alongside them relationally and help them navigate through this world.
Man.
What is up, guys? Influencers, RLTKPHX, Real Talk Phoenix, episode 18.
Wow.
We're an adult now.
Yeah, we are.
We're grown up.
We're progressing out of the teenage years right now. This is pretty cool.
And
Yes,
I'm here
sir.
for it.
Although I'm kind of sad, and you're here for it. Yep. Special guest in the building, number 2, none other than my homie, Chris Priebe.
What's
This
up?
is number
What
3.
is up? Did I say it right?
You did. I'm impressed. Yeah,
There you
because
go.
I mean, how often do you say my last name? Right?
Not
Yeah.
often. How many times have you heard somebody butcher it? Like, what do they usually say?
That's my life. All right, so all of 5th and 6th grade, I was called Priebe
Whoa.
Wow.
because that was the first day one. Teacher
Priebe.
said that, and everyone it stuck.
That's messed up.
Priebe is the usual.
Priebe.
Priebe has been said a time.
Priebe.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, just for our audience, so you guys know, Chris is an amazing guy who's doing some amazing work in our city, which we're going to get into. Coffee connoisseur, businessman, been a pastor as well, or still is. And so he's got his hands involved in multiple things, serving refugees, heavily involved in the foster care community, heavily involved in just connecting and being with people who are underserved.
Yeah.
And so we had Billy last week. Shout out to Billy.
Billy did my wedding, by the way.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Almost 16 years ago.
Well, that's awesome.
That's
We
crazy.
didn't even know
Small
that.
world.
Yeah.
Crazy, right? And so,
I feel like I always meet people that know Billy.
yeah.
Be like,
Everybody.
Billy
knows
Thrall, and they're like,
everybody.
yeah, he did my wedding.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
How many people can say he did my wedding? Probably most of Phoenix.
Yeah.
Wow,
if
that's
you don't know
crazy.
Billy, Billy knows you.
Yeah.
Anyways, enough of Billy. It's
Yeah,
Chris
he's done.
time
He
now.
had his episode.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
had his time. It's Chris time now. So, Chris, listen. Let's get this thing going. Here's my random question for you today.
Okay, I'm ready.
You ready? This shouldn't be too hard.
Lots of thought went into this question.
Yeah. Favorite coffee bean
Okay.
and why?
And why?
Wow. There's so many to choose from.
Got to pick one,
Yeah.
man.
All right, as a coffee roaster, now, can I say 2?
No.
I'm gonna break the rules because I'm a rule breaker.
All right.
That's what I do.
He's a
Break
disruptor.
You better
I am.
have a justification for why you breaking the rules right now.
I do. And here's why. The Ethiopian
Grace.
Yirgacheffe
Ooh, yes.
is so on point. It's got like floral, fruity
Oh, nice.
tones to it. It's so good, but it's not an everyday drinker, right?
Mm.
Well, I mean, maybe for some people, for like the super hipster folk, but
Yeah.
Shout out to the hipsters drinking Ethiopian every day.
They spit their coffee
Every
out
day.
just now as they heard that. What do you mean every day?
What? So, because sometimes I like it a little more like smooth, right? And a little more bold even. And so I think a good middle of the road everyday drink for me right now, the favorite of the beans that I'm roasting is a Mexican
Oh,
high
nice.
ground, high altitude bean. It's super smooth.
Just an everyday drinker.
It's an everyday, yeah.
Hey, so-
it's an every day, all day.
So inform me real quick. Another random question. I don't know this, and I'm probably going to get shamed by the coffee community, but it's okay. So,
We're here to educate. So.
yeah,
Yes.
please. So, like, medium roast, bold roast, light roast.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds pretty obvious, but I want you to explain it to me real fast.
All right, so the darker the roast, the further away you're getting from the natural flavors of the coffee seed, right?
Mm.
So you're losing the original flavors there, and you're getting more. That's why Starbucks is all like dark,
Yeah.
burnt roast, right?
That's their thing, right?
Because they're making it
Don't
uniform.
sue us, Starbucks.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding.
You're trying to
I'm-
get them to
I'm totally
get some paid ads on this show, right?
I
So
seriously
just messed that
doubt
up.
they care about our podcast.
Yeah, right? Who are these guys?
But they can make sure it's consistent every time because they don't have all the
Yeah.
complexities and the nuances that come with where it's grown, how it's grown, all that. So, but you actually lose. A lot of people think darker roasted coffee is stronger, maybe in taste and in roast flavor, but you're losing caffeine.
Wow.
The longer you roast it,
That's
less
tragic.
caffeine. Yeah.
Light roast all the way.
That messes
from now
my
on.
whole world up right
Caffeine.
now.
That's
Because
why
I
drink
love
coffee.
the dark bolt. I love that dark flavor.
I mean, it is good.
Yeah.
It is. That's why most of what we do when I roast it is a good medium roast. So you kind of
Okay.
toe the line, get a little best of both worlds in there.
Don't want to take all the caffeine out of it.
Yeah.
No. All right. So, Chris, who are you? Tell us your story.
Yeah.
How did you get here?
How did I get here? I hopped on the I-17.
Hey,
I'm a native to Phoenix.
Really?
unicorn
Yep.
in the building.
Also got that in common with Billy Throw.
Oh, wow.
So been here my whole life. I was born in 1984
Mm-hmm.
on a Sunday morning. I'm telling you all of how I got here, right?
Okay, bet.
Wow.
Come on.
So
Come on.
And you're
come
a
on.
pastor, so
Yeah.
it was
So-
written in the stars.
it was-
Born
yeah.
on a Sunday morning.
Yep. But it was I'm right on the edge of millennial, right? Like
Okay.
I don't know if I often like to claim that or not. But,
Right.
So I'm barely a millennial, born 1984, one of 8 kids,
Wow.
big crazy family. Parents divorced when I was real little,
Man.
and so there's 4 of us boys that have the same mom, same dad, and we rotate from house to house.
Wow.
And then we go to my dad's house, and we had a stepbrother, stepsister. We go to my mom's house. We had another brother and sister that had a different dad than we did.
Wow.
And so there's always 5 boys and 1 girl, but one of the boys and the girl rotated.
Wow.
Wow.
And I was the middle kid, and just kind of like middle kid syndrome. I was quiet,
Mhm.
got left out a lot.
Wow.
Wow.
Purposely did that to myself sometimes because I was like, I'm backing off from the craziness and
Yeah.
in a big family house, right? So my family was super shocked when I became a public speaker.
Really?
Yeah, so I got married at 19. We had kids around 24. Had our twin boys first.
Wow.
They're in 5th grade now, and then we had a 3rd boy later on, who's in 2nd grade now. But I started speaking with this organization in school. So we go into public schools,
Oh,
talk
cool.
about character, choices that you make, how every choice you make has an impact on you, the people around you, and your community. And
How old were you when you were doing this?
I started doing that at around 19 or 20.
Wow.
That's dope.
Yeah. It was around the same time I started rapping and
Oh,
performing
cool.
live shows. So my family was like, "What? Like, we only ever heard you say like 2 words growing up."
So did you grow up in a Christian home? Was it a solid Christian home? Or?
That's a loaded question.
I got you. Well, church going was a normal thing. It sounds like. Or?
Sometimes,
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
For the most part. So yes, a Christian home. We didn't always go to church.
Gotcha.
And there was a lot of just brokenness of life mixed in
Sure.
there too, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
that's most families.
Most people at church are out of church.
but yes, my
feel
parents were all
Yeah,
telling
man.
me about Jesus and like that. It was normal talk.
Okay, cool.
That's dope.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So and learned a lot through them that way. My older brother actually was one of the main people who discipled me.
Oh, wow.
So disciple's a weird word.
No, I understand what you're saying. Like he raised you up in the
Taught you.
faith.
Yeah,
told you
yeah,
things about
exactly,
Jesus. That's
exactly.
cool.
So, but a lot of my family not really walking that walk right now. So that's why I
Right.
say that's kind of a
No, I
question.
feel that.
So yeah, so I'm the only one of my siblings who's married.
Wow.
Only one who.
Out of 7?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, out of 8. Well, yeah,
That's
I'm one of 8,
crazy.
Yeah.
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 Out of 8. You're right.
Yeah. So yeah, 7 others not. And I got married young. It was like I said, 19. when I got married. And so people were like, "What is this gonna work?"
That's true.
And then I started like performing on stages, and I started
Yeah.
speaking at schools. And so I have to date like spoken to over 1 million students, teachers,
Wow.
and staff and parents like from all over the country. And so that was weird. Like I wasn't really in my nature growing up because I was super shy. So started doing that, and then through that, like just loved working with young people.
Wow.
Loved it. And then somewhere along the way, became a pastor too, which you guys mentioned, which that I just kind of fell into. I was not
Yeah.
looking. In fact, I ran from it a little bit. I didn't want to do that at all.
Yeah, I understand that.
I wanted to work with people outside of the church more so.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it just kind of became this inevitable thing where it was like I didn't have a choice in the matter.
Right.
And I love it now. I have a huge heart for the church that I get to help pastor at.
Man, that's awesome.
But through working in the schools and that work in our church, our church, we started working with a lot of kids in the foster care system and in group homes that were about to age out. And we started working a lot with this property in Phoenix where there's it's a high refugee population. And so we're working with a lot of young refugee kids that just came into this culture. They're trying to help pay the bills for their parents.
Man.
Their parents can't walk them through what it looks like to go get a job or to navigate school. parents don't know the language to teach them. Parents don't know how to prepare them for life. Like,
Yeah.
so they're just kind of figuring it out, right? And then it's the same thing with the foster care kids. Like, they don't really have many people walking them through that. And I realized, like, this is like a lot of the kids I'm speaking to in schools. You know, you just don't know it. Like, when you're sitting there in the public school setting, you don't know what.
Yeah, you don't know all the stories, right?
Yeah, and so we're going into schools and we're talking to them about making good choices and impacting your community for the better, which is great, and I believe in that. But a lot of these young people are going like, okay, I'm just trying to figure out how to survive.
Yep.
And so how do I go out and make the world a better place when, like, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to help mom pay rent this month so we don't get kicked out.
Right.
Or, you know, what am I going to do when I turn 18? They kick me out of this group home and they only give me a garbage bag for my belongings.
Right.
Like, all right, I'm going to go change the world.
Yeah.
I was talking to a kid just the other day. You remind me. I was meeting up with a student, goes to a local high school, and he's 15, and he already started working a job, and he's giving his mom like several $100s a month to help pay the bills of the house, and he's 15.
That's
and I'm
crazy.
just like, dang.
Yeah.
Like the way he's like, yeah, my dad just picked up and left. We don't even know where he is. He just walked out.
Yeah.
Wow.
And like he's somewhere in the city too, so he's not like in another state.
Yeah, he's probably like 5 minutes away, just doing his own thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's kind of nuts. I'm like, dang.
And it's crazy how common that story is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's sad.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I feel every bit of that.
Yeah. Yeah, we saw that and we're like, it's cool we have this wide reach, but what can we do more locally in our own city to speak more directly to some of these more vulnerable young people, right? The Gen Zers that are just like trying to figure out how to make it and then can become world changers, right? Like then they can do something to positively impact
once
their
they
community.
get out of survival mode.
Exactly.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of efforts by churches and other organizations are kind of focused on kids in the suburbs. And I've noticed before some of the kids that are in rougher neighborhoods or, you know, in parts of town that don't necessarily get the attention. It seems like kids that come out of those environments, you were talking about, you know, convincing them that they can be world changers, that there's this resilience that's in them that I've not noticed in other kids, you know, having to go through the grind. We were talking about sometimes the difficult things you go through in life, they can crush you or they can become like a superpower for you. Like, man, I went through that, something that strengthened me.
Yeah.
That's really cool what you're doing, man.
Yeah, and we see so much potential and, like you said, because of experiences, how life has shaped you, like just grit, you know, along with that potential. And if that can just be kind of cultivated in the right direction, you know, and kind of pointed at the right way. Man, that's pretty powerful.
And I think to just thinking about your point a little bit further, it's like there are organizations in those communities, but in those communities where there tend to be less resources, those organizations tend to have less resources, right?
True.
And so there's this huge limitation on what they're able to do because, you know, churches in other parts of town where there's more money have more money. And so there's not much of a limit, you know, or other organizations.
Right.
There's not much of a limit because they're in a place where they can get, you know what I'm saying, their community around them has more money to invest in that thing for the sake of that community, whatever it is, right? And so it's interesting to think about. But it leads us to what you're doing, which is kind of cool because you're in the community, have a business, and then using that to serve that community. So tell us a little bit about your shirt.
My shirt. Don't hate.
Cultivate.
Yeah. So,
nice.
Yeah,
we got it on there. Tell us more about this cultivation.
Can get one. Can
concept.
You put like a little like clickable
on Instagram
link on the video?
$12.
Click here. Tell me you listen to this episode and I'll hook you up with a discount.
There you go.
I'm going to be the first listener.
Shameless plugs.
Hey man, you got to do it, bro.
So my wife and I and a lot of our community, members of our church and just other friends and people, community members in Sunny Slope, where we close right by where we live, we opened up Cultivate Coffee. It's right next door to Sunny Slope High School. And that had been a long time coming of just this dream we had of creating a space for community to gather that was safe for all people to gather, but also was this space of kind of building into young people and helping them to realize their potential. And that's the idea behind the name Cultivate is it's drawing out what's already there.
Man, that's
good.
good.
To see that flourish.
Man, that's good. That's important, bro, because I think a lot of times people believe that when you see the underserved populations that we have to go save them.
Yeah, oh man.
You know what I'm saying? And it's not that we have to go save them. They have beautiful tools and gifts and skills that are on the inside of them, and things to teach us even. And like you said, we just need to create a space to have those things come to the surface, right?
That's real talk.
That's cool. That's super dope. Yeah, it is real talk, bro.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more. So how are things going? What are you guys doing?
Yeah.
What kind of events are you having? Like, lay it on us, bro.
All right. Yeah. So we opened this coffee shop. It's one, because I love coffee. My wife and I do. But two, because we just wanted a business, a vehicle to give job life skills training. So that's first and foremost. Like we always say, we're cultivating the people, the product, and the places that we're working with.
That's cool.
And so I want to draw out the most potential from that coffee too. And I roast the coffee. My wife runs the shop.
That's cool.
But also we want to draw out the potential and cultivate the people that we're employing. And so that's kids that are about to age out of the foster care system.
That's good.
Refugee youth. And so Gen Zers, this population that you guys feel very called to, right? That we do as well, but that are in kind of more vulnerable life circumstances. And yet, as we said, have this huge potential, like these gifts in them, these abilities, this grit. And so, so just kind of cultivating that. And then the place. So the community of Sunny Slope itself, it's where a lot of our young workers come from. But we're just saying, there's so many beautiful things in Sunny Slope, and yet also so many broken things too. And for us, it's just another picture of how some people choose to look at the young people we work with and just think like, oh, that's like they're broken, right?
Right.
And some people do it with Sunny Slope itself. Like you can look at it and go like, oh man, like I don't want to go to Sunny Slope. We had so many questions like, why'd you go to Sunny Slope?
Yeah.
But when you get there and you see like you're right in the valley, you see these beautiful mountain views, and then you also get to know the community, and you know how tight-knit it is, how diverse it is, the beautiful art that's coming out of there, the musicians that are there, the entrepreneurs that are there.
That's good, bro.
And it's like there's so many beautiful things, and so we're not there making something out of nothing. We're there coming alongside and helping cultivate
that's cool.
and draw out what's already there. And so so we highlight a lot of the local artists in our shop. We do open mic nights to bring the local musicians in. We have a lot of different local makers that sell their stuff in our shop. We host community events in there. What else? So, and then we employ the young people. So they come in.
That's cool.
We do what we call a cultivate cohort. Wednesday nights we share a meal together. We do some job life skills training, and then they can start this internship with us where they actually get paid to work at Cultivate.
Man, that's cool. Nice. It sounds like you got a lot of things that you've thought through practically as far as like employment, community, things like that, engaging Gen Zers intentionally. What were some of the things that motivated you for that? You were talking about at 19 you were doing this, and you're doing the same thing now, later on in life. So what are the things that you felt like motivated you to focus on young people, to, like you're saying, do all this stuff, build businesses, give yourself to the care and spiritual development of them? There's like a lot of things you're doing. Just speak onto some of the things that motivated you. Like, what were the things you were seeing as a young man and are still seeing?
Yeah, man, that's good. It's one of those things, like, if I'm honest, I never really thought through until I found myself in it. And then I've had to ask myself that question and look back and go like, yeah, how did I get here?
Wow.
What did lead me to that, right? And I could see there is a path. There is something that led to that. But it was almost like I've always kind of had this kind of like just go with the flow type of thing. And it's where I find myself. It's where I find, in my opinion, from my worldview, it's where I find God leading me into, right?
Right.
It's just like, this is where he's placed me in life. And so I'm just going to go with it. But if I look back and I ask that question, I think a lot of it comes from, looking at the two groups primarily of youth that we work with, kids about to age out of foster care, refugee young people. Like, I could have been in either one of those spots if one or two things went differently in my story.
Wow.
So I know it doesn't look like it. I'm a bald white dude. 35-year-old, privileged man sitting here. But I'm a quarter Lebanese. So just 2 generations before me came here from Lebanon, and their paperwork actually says they're from Syria because they made a mistake. And so, if you just move that a generation or two later, and there's a ban on Syrian refugees coming into America,
dang,
I wouldn't be here, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really not like, you can look at that and go like, oh, I'm so far removed, but that's really not that
It's
far
not
of
that long of a
in the
time.
history of our country. So I could have been on that path of being like a refugee coming over.
Wow.
But also as a kid growing up in a divided home, parents divorced, there were a couple times where, warranted or not, where neighbors had called DCS to come out to our house. At the time it was called CPS, right?
Right.
And we could have just been one case worker's decision away from being removed from the home.
Dang.
If they just like had a bad day,
Yep.
didn't really take the time to examine what was actually going on in our home, because
Very
there was
true.
no reason to remove us. But that happens all the time.
Yep.
There are kids that they shouldn't have been removed from the home, and it happens. And so I could have been in either one of these situations. And for me, growing up in a home where I did see some of my siblings fall into drugs, fall into some poor life decisions, who thankfully they're all leading great lives now. But I saw some of that. That was a lot of my motivation of going, how do I help guide and steer this next generation?
Wow.
That's good, bro. That's really good. I think it's interesting. So what would you say to somebody? Well, first of all, before I get to that, everybody loves coffee. And so the place that you should buy it is Cultivate. Where can we find it?
Yeah. So our website is cultivatecoffee.org. You can order coffee through subscriptions.
So you should do that like right now while you're listening to this podcast.
Go get a subscription.
Cultivatecoffee.org.
And they'll just mail it straight to your house?
Yeah.
But you're investing in young people's lives, which is pretty stinking dope. And that's what we care about.
I don't get paid a dime, by the way. My wife, who's running the shop, gets paid a little bit.
Yeah.
But she's not even on salary yet. And so most of the money is going into employing them.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah. The other option is if you live here in the Valley, like come to our shop. We're open Mondays through Saturdays. It's on 7th Avenue in Dunlap, right next to Sunny Slope High School. So the address is 505 West Dunlap.
You should definitely go check it out. I go there all the time. It's flames.
Yeah.
I love spending time there.
What's your favorite drink?
Right now, I've been bouncing between the Americano and, I mean, I'm a latte guy, so I always drink lattes, but Americanos, lattes, and then sometimes I'll just do black coffee.
Yeah.
And then I get usually when I just do the black coffee, it's the Mexican, so it's pretty good.
Yeah, it is good. So my wife knows your drink.
Yeah, she does.
She goes, hey, are you going to bring Jordan a drink? And obviously, you see, I didn't. But
you don't love me as much as your
on
wife does.
me.
Shout out to Bethany.
Yeah,
that's why she's getting paid something.
Bethany's something. Bethany's for real. So I was like, no, because I had to go somewhere else. It's going to be cold by the time I got here. But she was like, I was like, I wouldn't even know what to bring him. And she goes, bring an Americano. So she knows what's up.
Yeah, I just walked in the shop. She was like, do you want what you want? Yep. Okay, cool. It's there.
The Americano is so simple. That's how you know if it's a good coffee
honestly,
shop,
I got that from you because I know
Yeah.
you drank it all the time. I think I know your Starbucks order from Americano, by the way. So no more Starbucks.
Cultivate.
If you have to in a pinch, go Starbucks.
Exactly.
The blonde roast Americano is actually pretty decent.
I like the dark roast, but now that you told me there's more caffeine in the blonde, I'm going to have to start rethinking my
blonde
life
roast,
now.
More caffeine.
Yep.
So my other question for you is, as somebody who it seems like made an intentional decision to take your business and put it in a community that's underserved.
Mm-hmm.
Speak to me about that a little bit, and then what challenge would you give to somebody right now who maybe wanted to start a business?
Yeah.
Would you challenge them to do the same type of thing?
Seems like a difficult place to put a business, right? That's what you're getting at. Like, why would you do it in that area? Why wouldn't you do it,
Yeah, so that's the immediate thought, right? Is like, oh man, is it really going to do well? Like, is this good for business? Is it going to become self-sustaining? Because the reality is, as much as we are a nonprofit coffee organization, as much as we are in it for the mission, if we aren't paying rent, if we aren't keeping the lights on, like we can't do the work that we're doing, right? And so that's a real question. And at first, what drew us there was the mission. But then we had to figure out, is it going to make sense though, financially? Like, is it going to work? And the reality is, like, it does, because what we're doing is we're offering something that community wants just as much as every other community that has a Starbucks, that has a Dutch Bros and all that. Like,
Right.
They want that stuff there too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they want spaces for community too. You just got to approach it differently. You got to do a little bit of homework on that community and find out, like, all right, how do we speak their language? How do we become part of this community? How do we move in and tailor it to fit the needs of this community, not just drop in our own thing?
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and so I would say yes, challenge someone looking to start a business on that and go, don't just look at where all the commercial chains are going, but like look at where your business can make the most difference. Because if you're able to make the most difference and the most impact, it will eventually trickle into your bottom line too.
Yeah. And you guys said that you hired quite a few Gen Zers, right? Mm-hmm. Or you're hiring them. What are you seeing like in the work ethic of Gen Zers right now? I know there's a lot of criticism about Gen Z, but if you could just speak into some of that for our audience, so like, what are you seeing as a person who employs young people?
Yeah, for sure. I can mostly speak to right now the work ethic of Gen Zers who are in a difficult spot in life and want desperately to work out of it. And they are hard workers.
Really?
Yeah. So especially the refugee young people we work with are some of the hardest working people I've ever met.
Got any stories of it that you could share with us?
Yeah, there's this one family that actually recently moved out west to Goodyear, and so we don't unfortunately get as much time with them anymore. But we had two of the oldest sisters and the oldest sibling who was the only boy. This is out of 7 kids.
Wow.
They came here from Afghanistan. Dad passed away from cancer before they got here.
Wow.
Mom is on disability, legitimately. There's a lot of people on disability,
right?
Legitimately can't work, and does what she can from home. And then so the oldest kids are trying to figure it out. So when they were in Pakistan when they first left Afghanistan, one of the daughters, she went and figured out how to make carpet, taught the whole family how to make carpet.
How old is she?
She's now like 16.
How old was she when she learned?
When she was there. It was
very young, probably.
13, 12.
Wow.
And then like started this family business of making carpets.
Wow.
That's how they supported themselves, right? So now, like fast forward, they're in the States, and the oldest kid, the only male, he's now the like head of the household, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
He's going to school full time. He's finishing high school. Because guess what? His credits didn't transfer over from Afghanistan or Pakistan.
Wow.
So he's going to school full time. Found a school where he can go longer hours Monday through Thursday so that he can have Friday through Sunday to work.
Wow.
So he does not have a day off. He's working Friday through Sunday while going to school Monday through Thursday.
Man.
And I'm like, I don't know a 17, 18-year-old American citizen who's working that hard.
On the grind like that.
Yeah.
Would you say that's a misconception? You see a lot of things in the news about immigrants and people coming over here, and there's this idea, that they're just trying to take. And what you're saying sounds more like they're seizing an opportunity, and they're really hard workers trying to contribute to the American dream. Like, are there some misconceptions you could speak into for our audience concerning what refugees, what immigrants are experiencing, what you've experienced when you've interacted with them?
For sure. Yeah, and primarily our organization is working with refugees who, so a huge misconception there is throwing them in the same category as illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
And we can get into that whole conversation too.
That would be super helpful.
Clear misconceptions as well, but just for like the
Can
refugees.
you speak to a little bit of what the difference is on that?
Yeah, so refugees are brought here by the government.
Right.
So they're not illegal immigrants. They are actually welcomed in. And what happens is there's so many studies that show they actually pay back like tenfold what our government has put into bringing them here, right?
Wow.
So yes, they get a little bit of help when they move here. It's not a lot.
Right.
They get a little bit of help month to month when they move here, but they are expected to pay that back. And what happens is studies have shown that they not only pay that back, but because they actually enter into the workforce and become like law-abiding citizens,
right?
They, through their taxes, our government is actually making money off of them.
Wow.
So that's a huge misconception right there.
Right.
But even with the illegal immigrant conversation, right? There's all kinds of nuances with that, and I don't want to get into politics, but
sure,
I can just speak relationally to people that I've been in community with, and I see people who love their neighbors, and are trying to provide for their family.
Yeah, man. I used to work for the Department of Child Safety several years ago, and I would see that when I would interact with families. I'd interact with immigrant families, and you get all this stuff from the news until you really start seeing people in their homes and things like that, and dealing with them. And the thing that I would see consistently, these people are not taking away. They're on their grind. They're working hard. Some of them several jobs. And the thing for me when I would interact, it's like, man, there's just a lot of lies in the media concerning what people who are coming to this country are trying to do, right? And so it's really cool that you could speak into that for our audience. I appreciate that, man.
Thank you. So yeah, I think are there any other things that you're learning through your engagement with this community, specifically Gen Z? So you said that they work hard, right? Are there any other things that you can speak to concerning them that are like interesting to you? Like, wow, I noticed that these kids do this and they do that and they care about this and they care about that. What kind of dreams and aspirations do they have?
Or even things they have in common with other Gen Zers, like, wow.
Well, yeah, at the end of the day, they're all still kids, right?
Right.
Like, we've noticed it's cool. We started our first cohort, and we were like, do we do a separate track for the refugees and then one for the ones in the foster care system? Because, language barriers and things like that. And out of just like resources, like a lack of resources, we had to put it all together into one cohort. And it was the coolest thing because we started seeing them just become like young people, become kids. And like being able to hang out with each other and laugh together. And like some of them start flirting with each other.
Right.
But yeah, so that's one thing. It's just like, oh yeah, they're normal people. Right?
You can
have this category of like, they're the vulnerable.
Right.
But like, they're people.
Right.
And they have desires and dreams and aspirations and faults, just like everybody else.
Right.
And so some of the stereotypes of Gen Zers, of they're lazy or of they want everything handed to them, I guess, there's a little bit of that. Just like I have a little bit of that.
Sure.
I get lazy. Sometimes I want stuff handed to me, right?
Right.
True, man.
And so you see that, there's realities of like what the skills we're trying to give them is like the soft skills of, hey, make eye contact,
Yeah.
Don't be on your phone all the time, especially when you're at work.
Right.
You should probably take your AirPods out of your ear while you're working behind the counter, right? Like, so there's all that typical stuff that like maybe the old cranky version of me would be like, these kids,
Right.
There is that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because they're people. And the reality is like they just need someone to walk them through that and to help them understand that. Not to yell at them and come down on them, but to come alongside them relationally and help them navigate through this world.
Man, that's great.
So for our influencers out there, what advice would you give them if they were going to serve the population that you're serving? What things have you learned that you can share with them? What wisdom would you give them? What missteps have you made that you'd be like, hey, don't do that?
Right.
I would say number one is don't try so hard to be cool with them. I think we have this misconception that like, they're only going to like hear from me and talk with me and open up to me if I'm relatable. And like we try to like make ourselves cool, and that's ridiculous. One, they'll see right through that. I'm not that cool, and they catch on to that quick.
Right.
In fact, funny story, like real quick, there's this one kid that every time he comes up to like give me a handshake when he sees me, and I don't do it right. Like every time I'm just like fumbling over the like, and he just laughs at me every single time. I'm like, I'm going to get it one of these days, but this is how we used to do it back in my day. Right. Back in my day. But they don't care about that though.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter that I'm a 35-year-old balding white dude.
Right.
Because I'm present.
Wow.
And we have so many volunteer mentors that come into these cohort Wednesday nights and are meeting with them throughout the week as well. A woman in her 60s, a guy in his 50s, a younger dude, but who's got like a beard down to here, and like, like the old timey looking glasses. Like I think he looks cool, but like some of the kids are like, what kind of style is that? My wife, she always says like, I'm just not as cool as you are. Like I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about because I'm not cool. So like we're just normal people. There's nothing inherently awesome about us,
Right.
but we're present. And so that would be my number one advice is just be present, just be available, and be consistent. Because especially, and this is true not just for kids in the foster care system or refugee, immigrant, whatever. This is true for the suburb Gen Zer too.
Right.
Is they don't have someone who, I mean, this is a general, right? But like
Right.
most young people don't have someone who's willing to invest time, energy, and effort over the long haul.
Yeah.
And be consistent. They
Yep.
have people enter into their life for a moment, for a season.
Yep.
A coach is there for a season, right?
Yep.
They have like someone who will drop in for a little bit. And a lot of times, even the suburb kids have their parents at work 60 hours a week.
That's
and
right.
so they need someone to come just be a consistent presence with them who's just willing to be there.
Man, that's so good.
It's good.
Yeah.
Be present. So what missteps have you made that you're like, hey,
Other than the failed handshakes?
yeah, other than the failed handshakes, is there any stories, any things that you can share where you're like, man, that really didn't go the way I thought it would, or man, I won't do that again, or if I was going to give advice to somebody, I'd say, hey, don't do this.
Yeah. I think the first couple cohorts we did, I was talking at the youth a lot. I had this curriculum I wanted to go through. We still do. But it was like my expectation of like, you're going to come in and sit down and eat, and we'll like maybe like joke around for a little bit, but then like you're going to listen to me.
Right. So it gets real serious. Yeah.
And it's like, and you know what? I like I said, I've spoken to a lot of people over the years. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you could be the best speaker in the world.
Yeah.
That's not what they were there for.
Right.
They were there like to get out of their group home for a little bit, to socialize with some other people their age, to have community. And
That's
so,
good, man.
that was my biggest misstep, I think, was just like, I want you to come in here and take this knowledge that I'm coming to give you as the savior, right? And like, I want you to take that and then go be better.
Yeah.
It's like a terrible way of looking at it. Instead, entering into a community relationship, I'm finding I'm learning so much from them, and I'm growing as a person because of
that's
what
great.
they bring.
That's good.
It sounds like you've always had a heart for that, you know, reaching out to people, kind of crossing boundaries, just listening to you talking this short period of time that we've had. But what I'm thinking on is maybe I'm a teenager and I'm at school and there's some kids who are maybe from the other side of the tracks, or maybe they're refugees or whatever I'm thinking they are, right? And I've got a heart to engage them, but maybe I'm a little reticent, right? What would be some advice that you would give to that person? Or like you said, there's some kid in a suburban neighborhood and maybe he's noticed people move into the neighborhood, right? And I've noticed this before with people in the burbs. It really just, and people in general now, it's probably the technology that we have, but we're just really isolated from each other. We don't engage, you know? And so, especially in this context in high school, though, you know, Gen Zers we're dealing with, if someone was going to engage them and they had that desire, but not necessarily
the know-how,
what would you suggest would be a first way to interact with someone in that situation that you've experienced?
You know what breaks down walls quicker than anything else? Is stories. So we're in a culture where we get little bits of information, right? On your social feed, from the news, we get facts from politicians, and we get little bits of information, and we create a worldview around that. That is often not helpful and usually wrong. But when you actually sit down and hear the story of a person, that's going to break down so many barriers and so many walls. And so if you're wanting to kind of maybe step across the aisle and get to know someone different from you, the first thing is just to hear their story. And maybe if to like the person who's too timid to do that, to go out and like start that conversation, listen to a podcast then of somebody who's way different.
That's
than
good,
you, right?
man. Yeah.
Like watch a YouTube video of someone way different. Like
use technology to your advantage.
Yeah. And then start hearing these. My wife would always tell people she listens to this podcast, Snap Judgment, and it's like just different stories of different people. And she would hear these stories, and that started opening up her worldview a little more, and wanting to get to know people who are different from her, because she would hear these stories, and what that does is that connects you to them as a human being. You go, oh, they have the same thoughts and emotions that I deal with.
Right.
They have the same anxieties and fears that I do. They have the same hopes and aspirations that I do. We're not that different, really.
Man, that's so good.
It's good, bro. So, final question. How would you encourage someone who's in the same world that you are to keep going? Like, what would you tell them? How would you encourage them? Because I know that in the work that you're doing, it can get tiresome. It can get hard sometimes. So many challenges, right? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I know. I listened to that last episode you guys did with Billy Thrall, and you guys talked about compassion fatigue, which is a real thing. And so just kind of along those lines too, like it is hard sometimes. There's days where I just want to like, I don't want to go see anybody. I want to shut the door and just stay in my room and just watch Netflix all day long. And you know what? Every now and then you need to give yourself that day, right? Like it's okay. Like take those breaks. In fact, I think we're designed for rest just as much as we're designed for work.
That's good.
So
man.
we need that. But at the end of the day, I don't know how much like philosophy or technical know-how I can really give to that conversation. At the end of the day, all I could say is what works for me and what I found. And what I found is if I'm trying to do this in my strength and in my power, I will not last. My compassion won't last because I don't have enough of it. I have a lot of compassion for myself and not enough for other people. If I'm real and honest,
that's
you
good,
know,
bro.
the stuff that's really inside my heart and my head, and I don't have enough energy for other people, right? I'll quickly run out, but I have to look to my community who's coming alongside doing this with me. I can't be a lone ranger, and more than anything, I have to look to and draw upon the strength from. For me, it comes from the Lord Himself, from the Holy Spirit, like because God cares about these people I'm working with more than I do. He's the one that gives me the strength to continue to love and care for and be present with them.
And that's great.
Because He cares for me, you know, like that's the way that I'm able to go out and care for other people. And so I think about with that question, how do you encourage people to keep going? Like I quickly think of like the scriptures that talk about don't grow weary of doing good.
It's good.
And the way you don't grow weary of doing good is you remember the good that was done for you.
Man, that's so
by
good.
God Himself, by Christ. So
that's so good, man.
It makes me think about, as we wrap up, when Jesus says, he's having a conversation, like what commandments, right? The commandments can be summed up. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, and you'll fulfill the whole law if you do this, right? And so loving God and then serving people, which then leads me to the question that was asked, well, who is my neighbor, right? And then Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan, right? And this reality that these two people who culturally were supposed to despise each other, and how does that, like, how fitting is that for our culture right now? Right? The people that you serve and the people that live in this country, they're supposed to not like each other. And yet, what we see in the story is the person who's hated by the Jews at the time is the person that serves the guy who's laying on the side of the road and takes care of him. And then Jesus says, well, who is my neighbor? You know what I mean? And the reality is it's anybody. Like anybody you're coming into contact with, anybody that you have the opportunity to love on and care for and do something for, they're your neighbor. Like you said, like what does it profit you to do it for people that are like you? What does it profit you to love somebody who's going to love you in return? But if I can love somebody who has nothing to offer me, or at least I perceive they don't, and I'll actually find out later that they probably gave me way more than I gave them. That's the beauty of what happens, right? When we live a life that is not about self, and we live a life that is about others, right? And I think that's like what Christianity is. Like we've been called by God to live a life that is fundamentally concerned about the world and the people that live in it. And loving them in a way that would demonstrate that there is a God that loves them and wants to have a relationship with them.
That's good, man. It makes me think too of like, if that's the greatest command is love God, love others. There's another scripture that says we love because He first loved us. So like that's that source of, it's not this like, hey, you gotta like somehow muster up the strength to love someone when you really don't like them. Because that's hard to do. But no, because God has loved us and He fills us with His love, then we can, and you think about that, like we were that unnatural relationship. You're talking about that, like, oh, you're supposed to be enemies. Like if we turn our backs on God and go, I got this, I don't need you. Like what reason does He have to love us? But He does it anyway. And so because of that, now you have reason to love people
anyway.
That you don't necessarily stand to gain anything from it, but that's okay. because you're just overflowing with this love that's been given to you. And all our job is to set the table for that to happen. And so I think about like in our shop, in our space, I love when I see we have the Phoenix PD come in a lot of times from the Sunny Slope headquarters there. So Sunny Slope police officers come into the space, and we got our young people of color serving them behind the counter.
Yeah.
And they get into these conversations.
That's
and
cool.
I've loved seeing like a couple of them in particular, like these officers really wanting to get to know them and their stories, and these
powerful,
young people
bro.
wanting to get to know the officers too.
Wow.
And it was like one of the kids said to me, like, man, like they're actually cooler than I thought they were going to be. Just that little statement right there, I loved hearing, because you're bridging this gap in between people who are supposed to not like each other, and you're seeing love happen.
Man, that's cool. That's a great story.
Who is my neighbor?
Yeah.
All right.
Good stuff, man.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Sir.
Episode 18 in the books. Super excited.
Yeah.
Hey, and I'm going to like totally drop a bomb.
Uh-oh.
You got a podcast coming soon, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're going to be watching out for that.
Yeah. We're recording
about it.
a podcast with, sorry, real quick, since you brought it up, we're having our young people in the cohort produce this podcast.
Wow.
And so what they're doing is they're creating a 6-episode season 1 of the Cultivate podcast.
Hey.
They're deciding what it's going to be about, the stories they're going to tell. Man, that's cool. And then the next semester we'll have a different cohort decide what season 2 will be about.
Influencers, be looking out for that. We'll make sure we get the info out to you when that comes out. It's going to be pretty stinking cool. Chris, thank you again. RLTKPHX episode 18, Real Talk Phoenix in the books. Yeah. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, RLTKPHX. You'll find us underneath that tag. Other than that, we love you guys. We're grateful for you listening to the podcast. Remember, this isn't the end of the conversation, but the beginning, right? Yeah. This is fodder for you to take and to think about and to have conversations with other people about. We hope you found it helpful. Share it with somebody. Comment. Ask us questions if there's things that this has brought up in your mind. We'd love to continue the conversation with you. Talk to you soon. Peace.